The Galactic Council gathered in the grand chamber that floated above the City of Lights on the capital world. The hall was filled with the quiet hum of translators and the soft glow of thousands of alien delegates who had come from across the stars to witness a live broadcast from a frontier colony. The screens that covered the wall showed the planet below, a wild green world full of storms and jungles. It was a joint rescue mission between human soldiers and alien peacekeepers. The purpose was simple, or at least it had seemed so in the beginning, to save a trapped science team from a jungle region after a storm had destroyed their base. The Council had seen hundreds of such missions before. They expected the usual delays and mistakes, the kind that came when different species tried to work together. When the humans appeared on the feed, the chamber grew a little quieter. They stood among their alien partners, wearing simple armor and carrying light packs. To most of the Council, humans still looked out of place among the tall and elegant species of the galaxy. They were shorter, rougher, and their faces carried emotions too easily. The Council had always thought of them as fragile, unpredictable, creatures who survived more by luck than by strength. Yet, as the feed continued, the humans moved with quiet confidence. They checked their equipment, helped their alien partners adjust their suits, and seemed strangely calm for a mission that would lead them into one of the most dangerous parts of the planet. The alien commentator's voice echoed softly in the chamber as he explained that the human team was small but experienced. The others, on the Council, watched with polite interest. Some even whispered to one another about how curious it was that humans always wanted to help, even when danger was certain. A few laughed quietly when one of the humans smiled at the camera before boarding the dropship. It looked so naive to them, a small gesture of friendliness before walking into unknown danger. They thought humans smiled because they didn't understand fear. The feed showed the dropship entering the atmosphere, shaking under the pressure. The humans inside looked focused. One of them stared out the window at the lightning flashing across the sky, his face unreadable. The alien pilot's voice cracked through the comms, saying the storm was worse than expected. The Council saw one of the humans reach forward and place a hand on the pilot's shoulder, steady and calm. No words were needed. The ship steadied itself. The Council didn't understand the gesture, but they could feel something change in the air. When the dropship broke through the clouds, the view below took everyone's breath away. The jungle was vast and dark, stretching endlessly, full of strange lights that flickered among the trees. The pilot said they were entering the drop zone. The ship hovered for a moment, then released the ropes. The humans slid down first, one by one, landing smoothly on the muddy ground. Their movements were quick but quiet. The aliens followed, slower, more uncertain. At first, everything seemed calm. The humans scanned the area and began setting up a perimeter. The Council members leaned back in their seats, their interest fading. It looked like another routine mission. But then the feed picked up a sound, a deep growl from somewhere far in the jungle. The alien soldiers froze. The humans didn't. One of them raised a hand, signaling silence. The entire group stopped moving. For a few seconds, there was nothing but the sound of rain and wind. The Council leaned forward. Something was moving out there. Something big. The alien commentator began to explain that the planet's ecosystem was still not fully mapped. The scientists believed large predators lived deep in the forests, but no one had seen one clearly. The Council murmured quietly among themselves. Some laughed nervously. Others adjusted their seats, now more curious. The camera zoomed in as the human leader lifted a small scanner. The device flickered, then went dark. Something was jamming the signal. The aliens began to argue through their comms, unsure what to do next. The humans exchanged short hand signals and moved into a defensive circle. They didn't argue. They didn't ask questions. They simply adjusted to the situation. The Council could see it clearly on the feed, the way their eyes changed, the way their posture shifted. There was no panic, only focus. One Council member whispered that it looked almost instinctive, like an animal sensing danger. Minutes passed. The storm grew stronger. The team had to move. The humans took point, leading the way through thick vines and fallen trees. The aliens followed close behind. The camera shook as they moved. Every sound in the jungle felt heavy. The feed caught the moment one of the aliens slipped, his leg caught in the roots. Before he could cry out, a human grabbed him, pulled him, free, and placed a finger over his mouth. Silence. The alien nodded, breathing hard. The council chamber was silent too. Then came the second sound. Not a growl this time, but a low rumble that made the ground vibrate. The humans froze again. One slowly turned on his shoulder cam, pointing it into the trees. Something massive moved there, a shadow among shadows. The feed flickered. For a moment, the council saw eyes, large, reflective, and unblinking. The alien soldiers started shouting into their comms. The humans didn't speak. The leader raised, his hand again signaling the others to stay low. The camera view dropped to the ground as they crouched in silence. The only sound was breathing and rain. When the creature appeared, the entire council gasped. It was huge, covered in dark scales, its movements too fast for its size. The alien soldiers fired their weapons in panic, bolts of light flashing across the trees. The creature roared and lunged forward. The feed turned chaotic. Screams filled the audio. One of the aliens fell. The humans moved instantly. Two of them dragged the fallen soldier back while another fired short, controlled bursts. The creature recoiled, not because of the hits, but because it was suddenly facing something that did not run. The council watched in disbelief. The humans formed a half circle around the wounded and covered their retreat. Their movements were precise, not random. Every motion had purpose. The alien soldiers were shouting, some trying to flee, but the humans stood firm. One of them shouted for the others to move now. His voice was steady, sharp. The council saw the determination in his face. He wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to protect. The feed showed flashes of light, bursts of gunfire, and the creature retreating into the shadows. The humans didn't chase. They regrouped quickly, checking the wounded. The alien soldier who had fallen was alive, but in shock. A human medic patched him up with calm hands. The others secured the perimeter again. The council members who had been whispering earlier were now silent. None of them expected humans to react like this. There was no panic, no chaos, only purpose. The commentator spoke softly now, saying that the team had survived the first attack but that the mission was far from over. The scientists they came to rescue were still missing deeper in the jungle. The human leader looked into his camera for a brief moment, eyes cold and focused. He said one sentence, short and clear: "We keep moving." The council felt something. Strange then, an unease mixed with respect. As the team moved again, the cameras followed them through the darkness. The humans moved ahead, scanning every shadow, their senses sharp. The aliens followed, quieter this time. Even the jungle seemed to sense their presence. The rain began to ease, and the mist grew thick. The human leader raised his hand again, signaling a stop. The team froze. The sound of distant breathing came again, from the left this time. Without a word, the humans spread out, covering angles, their eyes sharp, movement silent. The council could almost feel their heartbeat through the screen. When the feed cut briefly due to interference, the chamber filled with nervous voices. Some thought the humans had been wiped out. Others said they were simply adapting. When the image returned, the humans were standing over something on the ground, a creature smaller than the first, its body twisted and lifeless. The humans had taken it down quietly, efficiently, before it could attack again. There was no cheering, no celebration, only a quick check of surroundings before moving on. The alien commentator's voice trembled now. He said that the humans had done what no other team had ever done on this planet. They had faced the apex predators and survived. The council sat in silence, realizing they had just seen something they didn't fully understand. One member finally spoke in a low voice. He said, "They didn't fight like soldiers. They hunted like predators." The broadcast continued for another hour, showing the humans pushing deeper into the jungle, finding traces of the missing scientists. The aliens had stopped questioning orders. They followed the humans' lead now. Every motion, every decision from the humans seemed certain, as if they were guided by something older than training, something instinctive. The council members leaned back slowly, each of them lost in thought. By the time the feed ended, the council chamber was filled with silence again. They had come expecting a routine mission. Instead, they had seen humanity in a way they never had before. Not as weak, not as emotional, but as creatures forged by survival, capable of turning fear into focus. They didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear in every alien mind present in that room. Humanity was not to be underestimated again. The jungle was quiet after the attack, but it was not a peaceful silence. It was the kind of silence that made every sound feel louder and every shadow feel closer. The human team moved slowly now, their eyes scanning every inch of the dark forest around them. The aliens followed, trying to stay calm, but their breathing was shaky and their movements unsure. The humans did not speak. They only used hand signals and short gestures to guide each other through the thick fog that wrapped the jungle like a heavy blanket. The camera feed followed their movements as the dropship above tried to keep contact through the storm clouds. The Galactic Council watched from their chamber in complete silence. Every pair of eyes in that bright hall was fixed on the flickering images from the surface. One of the alien soldiers whispered that they should turn back, but the human leader shook his head slowly. They had a mission. The scientists were still missing, and no one knew if they were alive. The humans had already marked a path on their scanner showing the last signal received from the science team. The distance was not far, but in that jungle every meter was a fight. The human leader gave a short signal and the team started to move again. They stepped over roots and fallen trees, their boots sinking into wet mud. Every few minutes they stopped and listened. The humans seemed to hear things the aliens could not. Sometimes they changed direction suddenly as if guided by a sense the others did not have. The council members whispered among themselves, trying to understand what they were seeing. One of them said it was strange how humans could remain so calm even after facing something that should have terrified them. Another said they were trained for this, but deep down all of them knew training alone could not explain what they were watching. There was something in the humans that went beyond discipline. It was something ancient, something that came from a world that had always been hostile to life yet somehow gave birth to them. The feed shifted as the team reached an open area where the jungle broke into a shallow valley. The ground there was covered with broken machines and pieces of metal. The humans stopped at once. It was the wreckage of a small science outpost. Smoke still rose from the twisted frames. The alien soldiers hesitated, but the humans moved forward, carefully. One of them crouched down and touched a mark on the ground, then looked around. He found footprints leading away from the wreck. The scientists had survived the first attack. That meant there was still hope. The alien commentator spoke, softly now, explaining that the planet's predators were known to stalk their prey for hours before striking again. The council members leaned forward. They could feel the tension in the air. The humans began to follow the footprints deeper into the valley. The trees grew thicker again and the air felt heavier. A strange sound started to echo through the forest, low and rhythmic like breathing. The aliens froze, their weapons shaking. The humans stopped too, but not from fear. They listened. Then they began to move faster. The camera followed as they approached a cave entrance hidden behind a curtain of vines. The leader signaled the others to spread out. 2 humans moved to the sides, covering the flanks, while the rest prepared to enter. The aliens hesitated again. One of them whispered that it was too dangerous, but the human medic told him quietly to stay behind if he wanted. The council could see the expression on the alien's face. It was confusion mixed with admiration. The humans went in first. The inside of the cave was dark and damp. Their lights cut through the darkness, revealing old stone walls covered in strange patterns made by water and time. The humans moved silently, every step measured, every sound controlled. They found signs of struggle, a broken data pad, a torn piece of fabric, blood on the rocks. The medic checked it quickly. It was recent. The missing scientists had been here only hours ago. The human leader gave a short nod and they kept moving deeper. Back in the council chamber, the air felt heavy. None of the delegates spoke. They watched the humans move through that darkness like they had done it all their lives. The commentator said quietly that no other species would have gone in. Most would have called for orbital support or waited for daylight. But the humans seemed drawn to danger not out of pride but because they refused to leave anyone behind. As the team reached the deeper section of the cave, the sound of water dripping filled the air. Then came another sound, a faint cry. The humans froze. They turned their lights toward a small passage at the end of the tunnel. The cry came again, weak but clear. Without hesitation, the human leader motioned 2 of his people forward. They crawled through the narrow space while the rest covered them. The feed showed the 2 emerging into a small chamber where 3 scientists sat huddled together. They were terrified and exhausted, but alive. When they saw the humans, their faces changed from fear to disbelief. One of them tried to speak, but the human simply placed a finger on his lips and whispered, "Quiet." The council exhaled collectively. The mission had succeeded, but deep down they knew it was not over. The humans helped the scientists move toward the exit, but then the sound returned, louder now, a deep growl that shook the cave walls. The camera shook as rocks fell from above. The creature was back, and it was not alone. The humans formed a circle around the scientists. The aliens outside shouted through the comms asking what was happening, but the humans ignored the panic. Their breathing slowed. Their eyes narrowed. They raised their weapons not in fear but in focus. The first creature burst through the vines, at the cave mouth. It was even larger than before. The aliens outside screamed and opened fire wildly. The humans inside did not move. They waited. When the second creature lunged from the side, the human leader fired one precise shot to its eye. The creature stumbled. The others moved in perfect rhythm, covering every angle. The council could not believe what they were seeing. It looked less like a battle and more like a hunt. The humans were not reacting, they were anticipating. Every move they made forced the creatures into positions where their line of fire was strongest. One of the scientists tripped as the ground shook. A human soldier pulled him up instantly and shielded him from a falling rock. The leader shouted for the team to fall back. They began to retreat step by step, never turning their backs, keeping the creatures at bay. The aliens outside were still firing, but their panic made their aim useless. The human leader shouted something short and firm over the comms, and the aliens stopped shooting. For a moment there was only silence and the sound of heavy breathing. Then the humans moved again, guiding everyone out of the cave and into the open. The storm outside had eased. Lightning flashed across the sky as the humans formed a defensive line at the entrance. The creatures roared again and charged. The humans opened fire together, each shot hitting the same spots again and again until the beasts slowed. When one of the creatures leaped high toward them, the leader dropped his weapon and drew a blade from his side. He met it mid-air, using its own weight to drive it down. The impact shook the ground. The camera caught it all. The council chamber was filled with gasps. No one had ever seen such coordination between instinct and control. When the battle ended, the humans stood breathing, hard but steady. The creatures lay still on the ground. The human leader looked around, counted his people, and then checked the scientists. Everyone was alive. He gave a small nod. The aliens began to approach slowly, still in shock. One of them whispered that they did not understand how the humans had done that. The human medic simply smiled faintly and said, "We adapted." The council could feel the weight of those words. Adaptation was a simple concept to most species, but for humans it meant something deeper. It was not just physical change, but mental transformation. They could turn fear into awareness and chaos into order. The footage on the screen showed them tending to the wounded and preparing a signal for extraction. Their faces were calm again, as if the violence from minutes ago had never happened. The commentator spoke softly, saying that the team had saved all the scientists and neutralized 2 of the most dangerous predators on the planet. The mission was a success. But the council members did not clap or cheer. They sat still, replaying the moment in their minds when the humans had moved in perfect silence, as if guided by something primal. One of the elder council members finally spoke, saying that what they had witnessed was not luck or technology, but evolution at its finest. Humanity did not just survive on a death world, they became part of it. As the dropship arrived to extract, the camera caught the final image of the humans standing in the rain looking up at the sky. Their faces were unreadable. The stormlight reflected in their eyes made them look both fierce and calm at the same time. When the ship lifted them away from the jungle, the council chamber slowly filled with quiet murmurs again. Some members said they should study the humans more closely. Others said it might be wiser to keep a safe distance. None of them spoke loudly. They all knew that something had changed in how they saw humanity. The feed ended with the human leader giving a final report to the command ship above. His voice was steady as he said the scientists were safe and the area secure. The officer on the other end thanked him and asked how his team managed to survive when others would have failed. The leader paused for a moment before replying that they did what humans always did. The ship carrying the human rescue team and the recovered scientists rose through the storm clouds, leaving the jungle below, covered in mist. Inside the dropship, the air was thick with exhaustion, but no one spoke. The humans checked their gear quietly and helped the scientists secure themselves for the trip back. The aliens sat apart, still shaken from what they had seen. They whispered among themselves but kept their voices low as if afraid the humans could hear them. The human leader sat near the cockpit, staring out the small window at the fading green world below. His eyes looked calm, but there was something behind them that no one could read. The Galactic Council chamber watched the live feed in silence. No one had turned away since the mission began. They had watched fear turn into focus and chaos into control. Now, they were watching what came after. The commentator spoke in a low voice, saying the team was returning to orbit for debrief. Mentioned how remarkable it was that despite everything they had faced, the humans showed no visible fear. A few council members exchanged glances, but no one disagreed. They had all seen the same thing. The feed shifted to show the command ship waiting in orbit above the planet. It was a large vessel built for multiple species and used for council-supervised missions. The dropship entered the hangar and the doors closed behind it. The humans were the first to step out. Their uniforms were covered in mud and ash, but their posture remained straight. The scientists followed, looking tired, but alive. The alien crew in the hangar clapped softly, but the humans did not react much. They simply nodded and began unloading equipment. The council continued watching as the team was taken for medical checks. The human medic refused treatment until all others had been cleared. When one of the alien doctors insisted, he smiled politely and said he was fine. The doctor scanned him anyway and found his heart rate almost normal, even after hours of battle and stress. The council members whispered again. They could not understand how a species from a dangerous world could show such peace after facing death. Later, the humans were called to a briefing room. The commander of the mission, an alien with silver skin and calm voice, asked them to explain how they had handled the attack. The human leader stood quietly for a moment before answering. He said they followed their training and adapted to the environment. The commander asked how they could stay so calm when the creatures attacked. The leader replied that panic never helps anyone survive. His tone was flat, but his words carried weight. The council watched closely, and one of them murmured that humans spoke of fear like they had tamed it. After the debrief, the humans were given rest quarters, but none of them went to sleep. Instead, they sat together in the mess hall, eating quietly. The camera feed captured them talking in low voices about the jungle, the creatures, and the scientists they had saved. There was no talk of glory or heroism. They spoke about mistakes, to avoid next time, and how the creatures reacted to light and sound. It was all practical and calm. One of them laughed softly about the alien soldiers nearly running out of ammo in panic. Another said they did well considering it was their first mission on such a planet. Their tone was not mocking, only understanding. In the council chamber, one of the older members said this was the difference between humans and others. They saw danger not as an enemy but as a teacher. Another agreed, saying that humans treated survival as an art that required respect for both life and death. The younger delegates listened silently, not sure whether to be impressed or afraid. The Feed then showed the humans resting finally in their quarters. Some were cleaning weapons, others writing short reports. The leader sat by a small window looking out at the stars. His face looked tired now, but peaceful. He took a small object from his pocket, a charm of some kind, and turned it in his hand. It looked old and worn. The camera zoomed slightly and showed that it was a piece of metal shaped like a small tooth. Perhaps from an animal on Earth, perhaps something else. He looked at it for a long time before putting it away and closing his eyes. Hours later, an alarm sounded on the command ship. The council members leaned forward as the feed changed to show lights flashing and officers rushing through corridors. The commentator said a second signal had been received from the planet below. Another team that had been monitoring the jungle had lost contact. The council murmured in surprise. The humans were still resting, but as soon as the alarm sounded, they were already awake. The leader was the first to reach the command deck. He asked what happened, and when told about the missing team, he simply said, "We will go." The alien commander tried to protest, saying they had just returned, but the human only looked at him and said quietly, "If they are still alive, we will find them." The council watched in disbelief as the humans began preparing again without hesitation. Their bodies moved slower from fatigue, but their focus was even sharper. They checked weapons, reloaded supplies, and coordinated their approach. The alien soldiers from the previous mission refused to go back, but one of them asked if he could stay on the ship to monitor from above. The human leader thanked him for his help and said that was enough. The aliens in the council chamber felt a strange mix of guilt and admiration. As the second dropship descended toward the planet again, the storm had cleared. The sky was red from the rising sun. The camera from the cockpit showed the jungle glowing, with mist and light. It looked calm, but everyone knew what waited below. The humans landed near a broken signal beacon and began moving toward the last known coordinates of the missing team. The ground was still wet from rain, and every step left deep prints in the mud. The sound of insects and distant calls filled the air. They found the first signs of trouble within minutes: burn marks on the trees, broken weapons, and claw marks on rocks. The humans examined everything quietly. One of them pointed out that the attack seemed recent. The human leader ordered silence, and they moved forward in a low formation. The council chamber was silent too. The commentator whispered that the humans were now moving through one of the most dangerous areas on the planet. As they entered a narrow gorge, the air grew colder. The light dimmed as the tall trees blocked the sun. The humans slowed down even more. Then one of them raised a hand, signaling a stop. He pointed toward the ground where strange patterns appeared in the mud. Tracks, but not of the creatures they had fought before. These were smaller, but there were many of them. The human leader studied them for a moment, then motioned to take the high ground along the rocks. They climbed silently and moved above the gorge. A few minutes later, shapes began to move below them. The council gasped when they saw them. Dozens of smaller predators, fast and agile, moving in packs. They were dragging something. When the camera zoomed, it showed one of the missing team members barely alive. The humans waited silently, watching the movement. The alien commentator's voice trembled as he said that no one could save that person without being torn apart. The council members agreed quietly, but the humans did not wait for orders. The leader gave a single hand sign, and his team moved as one. The first two humans dropped from the rocks, landing behind the pack. The creatures turned too late. Silenced shots rang out one after another. The rest of the team moved down like shadows. In seconds, the pack scattered. The humans reached the wounded survivor and pulled him behind cover. They checked his vitals quickly, then continued firing short bursts to keep the creatures away. The council could barely follow their movements. It looked more like instinct than strategy. Every step, every turn, every breath was part of an unspoken rhythm. The fight ended quickly. The remaining creatures fled into the trees. The humans stayed, alert for several more minutes before lowering their weapons. The rescued alien was in bad condition but alive. The medic started treating him on the spot. The leader looked around, scanning the trees again. The camera caught his face as he said softly, "They were not hunting us. We entered their territory." His tone carried no anger, just understanding. Back in the council chamber, no one spoke. They had just witnessed humans in their element again. One of the observers said it was as if the jungle itself could not frighten them. Another whispered that maybe it was because they had already learned to live with fear since birth. The footage showed the humans building a small stretcher and preparing to move the injured back to the landing zone. The creatures did not return. The jungle was silent again, almost respectful. When the humans finally returned to the ship, the council members exhaled as if they had been holding their breath. The commentator said the mission was successful and the rescued team would survive. But the real story was not the rescue. It was the way the humans had moved and fought. Even the alien officers on the ship looked at them differently now. There was quiet respect in their eyes. As the dropship rose from the jungle again, the human leader looked out of the window. The camera caught his reflection. His face was calm, but his eyes seemed far away. Maybe he was thinking of the creatures below, or maybe of home, no one could tell. The commentator ended the transmission with a single line saying that humanity had once again shown why they were called children of a death world. In the council chamber, no one disagreed. When the session ended, the delegates left slowly. Some looked thoughtful, others uneasy. One of them said quietly that they had just seen what the galaxy. The air on the alien world was thick and heavy with smoke and fear. The jungle had become a battlefield where every sound seemed alive with danger. The Galactic Council still watched from their shining hall as the live broadcast showed humans and aliens trying to survive against the unseen creature that had already taken down half of the team. The council members leaned forward in silence as the image flickered, showing glimpses of movement between trees and the soft glow of energy weapons being fired in every direction. The alien soldiers were panicking, their voices filled with fear, shouting for retreat, calling for help. Their movements had lost all order, and their shots hit nothing but trees. But the humans were quiet. They did not run, they did not shout, they moved with strange calm. Their leader raised a hand and the others stopped instantly, like a signal passing through them without sound. It was not fear that moved them. It was focus, and the council could see it in their eyes through the visor cams. They looked like creatures who had seen this kind of danger many times before. One of the council observers whispered that humans were cornered animals, but another corrected softly, saying they were hunters, not prey. Down below, the camera followed as the humans spread out low to the ground. Moving with slow, controlled motions, they switched off their lights, relying on the faint heat readings from their helmets. The alien soldiers could not see anything and stayed behind, trembling, but the humans seemed to see everything in the dark. The council chamber was silent except for the faint sound of breath from the audio feed. Even the creatures' growls were distant and low, like thunder moving between trees, and then there was nothing, only silence that stretched so long that it made even the council members uneasy. The aliens watching the feed from their own ships started murmuring that maybe the humans were lost or dead. But then a human voice came through. The calm and clear, saying target located 1 click east, moving fast, and before anyone could ask what that meant, the humans began to move again. The camera caught the faint shapes of them advancing through fog. Their movements were so synchronized that it seemed like one being with many bodies. The council members whispered to one another, asking if this was training or instinct, but no one had the answer. The creature appeared suddenly, bursting through the foliage, its size enormous, its claws cutting through trees like thin grass. The aliens screamed over the comms. The council members gasped, but the humans did not hesitate. One of them threw a signal flare into the air, lighting the clearing in red light. The creature turned toward it, and in that single moment every human fired together. Their weapons were not the strongest in the galaxy, but their aim was perfect. Every shot hit the weak spots they had marked from observation, and when the creature charged again, they did not run. They spread out, forcing it to turn in confusion, its body heavy and its movements slower than theirs. One of the humans leapt onto its side, planting a charge before rolling off. The impact made the feed shake, and then there was a loud roar, followed by dust and silence again. When the smoke cleared, the creature was down, still breathing but wounded. The humans moved closer. Slowly, weapons aimed, their leader gave a quiet command to hold fire, and for a moment it looked like they were going to finish it off, but instead the leader knelt down near the creature's head and looked at it. The council could see through the helmet cam that the human was breathing slowly, Eyes steady, voice calm, saying something that was not for killing, but for respect. The council members looked at one another confused. The humans were not celebrating or mocking the fallen beast. They were simply breathing, letting their pulse slow down. Like the hunt was never about rage. It was about balance. One council member whispered that this was not war. This was instinct. Another said it was more than instinct, it was discipline. The aliens in the field who had survived looked at the humans with wide eyes. They had never seen such control after such danger. They whispered to one another, saying that they thought humans were reckless, but they were wrong. They were precise. They had seen death and learned to dance with it. The council's hall was filled with quiet voices trying to make sense of what they had seen. The footage replayed in silence, showing again and again how the humans turned toward danger instead of away. One of the senior members spoke softly to the others, saying that if this was how they reacted in defense, imagine what they could do if they hunted by choice. Another replied that perhaps it was best they never did, for the galaxy would tremble if that day came on the screen. The humans began tending to the wounded aliens, carrying them gently with care. They built temporary shelters and sent a message to the orbiting ship that the threat was neutralized and the survivors were safe. The humans spoke softly to each other, helping even those who had panicked earlier. There was no anger, no pride, only calm, unity. The council realized they were watching something rare, not soldiers following orders, but living beings acting out an old memory, older than civilization itself, a memory written into their nature. When the last transmission ended, the hall remained still. No one clapped. No one spoke. Every leader, every diplomat, every observer sat in the heavy quiet of realization that they had witnessed something ancient, something no amount of technology could replicate. A few minutes later, a council security officer turned to his superior and asked quietly, "What are they really?" Sir, the superior took a long breath and answered, "They are hunters from a world that never forgave weakness and never rewarded fear. They are what happens when survival becomes art." And for the first time, the council understood why humanity could smile and laugh so easily. Because behind that kindness, there was strength born from endless struggle. And behind their calm, there was a storm they chose to control. The recording ended, but the image stayed in everyone's mind. The humans standing in the dark jungle, breathing slow, their eyes reflecting the faint light of a dying fire, like predators who had learned mercy but never forgotten how to hunt. The council dismissed for the night, yet even as they walked away from the chamber, the echo of what they had seen followed them, reminding them that the humans were not to be feared because they were monsters. They were to be respected because they had learned how not to be one. The jungle was quiet again after the chaos. The thick air hung heavy with smoke and the smell of burned wood and strange alien blood. The humans stood among the ruins of what had been a desperate fight. Their faces were calm, but their eyes were tired, their breathing slow and deep. The alien survivors stared at them in silence, still trying to understand what had happened moments ago. They had all been sure they were going to die. But then the humans had moved with a kind of focus that looked more like nature than training. The Galactic Council watched every second from their great hall. The broadcast still live. Every alien leader, every observer, every soldier could see the aftermath. The humans were not cheering. They were not celebrating. They simply began to work again. Their leader gave soft orders to check the wounded, to collect supplies to help the fallen. They carried the injured aliens gently, as if their bodies were made of glass. They spoke in calm voices, words of reassurance, saying they were safe now that it was over. And the aliens who had once mocked them now followed their directions without question. One of the council members whispered that no other species moved like that after a battle. Others always needed time to recover, to find courage again. But the humans simply moved forward like they had always known how to live between danger and peace. One of the alien survivors tried to thank them, but his voice broke. He said he was sorry for not trusting them. Earlier, one of the humans smiled softly, saying there was nothing to forgive, that fear was natural, and that they had felt it too. That simple honesty made the council hall even quieter, because they realized the humans did not see fear as weakness. They saw it as part of survival. The humans built a small shelter using what was left of their supplies. They set up medical kits and food packs, sharing everything without hesitation. Even the food that was meant for them, they gave to the aliens. First, one alien officer asked their leader why they were being so generous, and the human only said, "Because that is what we do." The council continued to watch as the humans began to secure the area, marking traps and setting warning flares around the perimeter. Their leader took a long look at the jungle where the creature had fallen and then ordered a small team to retrieve the body. They did not cut it apart for study. They did not take trophies. They only wanted to understand what it was and make sure it would not suffer any longer. One council elder whispered that no hunter had ever shown such respect to a kill, and another answered softly, "Maybe that is why they survived so long." The humans returned carrying the massive creature. On a floating stretcher, they covered it with a tarp and marked its location so the scientists could study it later. But none of them seemed proud. They were quiet, their eyes thoughtful, as if they understood that something had been lost and something had been learned. They gathered near a small campfire while the night fell. The alien survivors sat nearby, still shaken but grateful. One of them asked how they had stayed calm during the attack. The human leader answered in a low voice, saying that panic kills faster than any enemy, and that on their world fear was a teacher, not an enemy. They spoke about their home, about a planet that was full of storms, volcanoes, and beasts that hunted by night. They said that the first humans learned to survive not by strength but by learning to work together, by watching the land, by reading danger like a story. The aliens listened quietly, realizing that this was not just a story, it was a reflection of everything they had seen. The council members looked at one another as the realization spread that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their numbers, it was their ability to stay human, even in chaos. One of the younger council aides whispered that they had seen many species fight but none act with such purpose. Another answered that purpose was what made them human. As the night grew deeper, the humans took turns guarding the camp. They moved silently, scanning the trees, their weapons ready, but their faces peaceful. There was no anger left in them, only awareness. The alien soldiers could not sleep. They watched the humans in awe, whispering to each other, wondering how they could be so calm after facing such death. One of them asked if they were not afraid of it coming back, and the human who stood guard only said, "If it does, we will face it together." And that simple answer filled the alien with comfort. More than any wall or weapon could the council chamber stayed lit through the night. They could not turn away. From the broadcast, every frame seemed to show something that challenged their understanding of war and peace. The humans sitting around the fire talking quietly about home. The alien survivors listening like children. The small smiles, the calm eyes, the easy laughter after horror. One elder member spoke finally, saying, "They are not killers, they are keepers of balance." Another asked what balance meant, and the elder replied, "The balance between life and death, between fear and courage, between chaos and peace." The humans live inside that space, and that is why they do not break when others do. In the early morning, the mist returned to the jungle. The humans packed their camp and prepared to move. The alien commander asked where they were going, and the human leader said to find the others who might still be lost. The council saw as the humans led the group through thick fog, every step careful, every sound measured. They carried their wounded and shared the load. No one was left behind. No, one walked alone. When one alien stumbled, a human reached out without hesitation to help him stand again. The council members saw that simple moment replayed in the feed, a gesture so small but filled with meaning, and they realized that in those quiet moments after battle, the true nature of humanity shone brighter than any victory. When the rescue team reached the landing zone, the extraction ship descended through the clouds. The humans helped everyone aboard before stepping in themselves. They checked the area one last time, making sure no one was left. Even the body of the fallen creature was marked with a beacon, so it would not be forgotten. As the ship rose, the camera showed the humans looking down at the jungle, their faces unreadable. Maybe they were thinking of home, or maybe they were simply ready for the next challenge. The council session ended when the transmission cut off, but no one moved for a long time. The hall was filled with silence. Only the faint hum of machines could be heard. One council member finally said that the humans had done more than survive, they had shown the galaxy What strength really meant, another added that they had done it without cruelty, without arrogance, only with focus and heart. The senior member of the council stood slowly, saying that the galaxy must now understand that humanity's danger is not their aggression, but their choice, when to act, that they could hunt like beasts, but choose to protect like guardians. The others nodded, slowly realizing that this single mission had changed everything from that day on. Every commander, every diplomat, every scholar would remember what they had seen. They would remember the humans who turned fear into control and chaos into calm, and when the galaxy spoke of hunters, they would no longer think of monsters. They would think of humans who could walk through death and still choose mercy. And as the lights in the hall dimmed, one last voice echoed, saying quietly, "They are not dangerous. Because they fight, they are dangerous, because they know when not to." And those words stayed in the minds of everyone who had witnessed the event long after the screen went dark. The air on the alien world was thick and heavy with smoke and fear. The jungle had become a battlefield where every sound seemed alive with danger. The Galactic Council still watched from their shining hall as the live broadcast showed humans and aliens trying to survive against the unseen creature that had already taken down half of the team. The council members leaned forward in silence as the image flickered, showing glimpses of movement between trees and the soft glow of energy weapons being fired in every direction. The alien soldiers were panicking, their voices filled with fear, shouting for retreat, calling for help. Their movements had lost all order, and their shots hit nothing but trees. But the humans were quiet. They did not run, they did not shout, they moved with strange calm. Their leader raised a hand and the others stopped instantly, like a signal passing through them without sound. It was not fear that moved them. It was focus, and the council could see it in their eyes through the visor cams. They looked like creatures who had seen this kind of danger many times before. One of the council observers whispered that humans were cornered animals, but another corrected softly, saying they were hunters, not prey. Down below, the camera followed as the humans spread out low to the ground. Moving with slow, controlled motions, they switched off their lights, relying on the faint heat readings from their helmets. The alien soldiers could not see anything and stayed behind, trembling, but the humans seemed to see everything in the dark. The council chamber was silent except for the faint sound of breath from the audio feed. Even the creatures' growls were distant and low, like thunder moving between trees, and then there was nothing, only silence that stretched so long that it made even the council members uneasy. The aliens watching the feed from their own ships started murmuring that maybe the humans were lost or dead. But then a human voice came through. The calm and clear, saying target located 1 click east, moving fast, and before anyone could ask what that meant, the humans began to move again. The camera caught the faint shapes of them advancing through fog. Their movements were so synchronized that it seemed like one being with many bodies. The council members whispered to one another, asking if this was training or instinct, but no one had the answer. The creature appeared suddenly, bursting through the foliage, its size enormous, its claws cutting through trees like thin grass. The aliens screamed over the comms. The council members gasped, but the humans did not hesitate. One of them threw a signal flare into the air, lighting the clearing in red light. The creature turned toward it, and in that single moment every human fired together. Their weapons were not the strongest in the galaxy, but their aim was perfect. Every shot hit the weak spots they had marked from observation, and when the creature charged again, they did not run. They spread out, forcing it to turn in confusion, its body heavy and its movements slower than theirs. One of the humans leapt onto its side, planting a charge before rolling off. The impact made the feed shake, and then there was a loud roar, followed by dust and silence again. When the smoke cleared, the creature was down, still breathing but wounded. The humans moved closer. Slowly, weapons aimed, their leader gave a quiet command to hold fire, and for a moment it looked like they were going to finish it off, but instead the leader knelt down near the creature's head and looked at it. The council could see through the helmet cam that the human was breathing slowly, eyes steady, voice calm, saying something that was not for killing, but for respect. The council members looked at one another, confused. The humans were not celebrating or mocking the fallen beast. They were simply breathing, letting their pulse slow down. Like the hunt was never about rage, it was about balance. One council member whispered that this was not war. This was instinct. Another said it was more than instinct, it was discipline. The aliens in the field who had survived looked at the humans with wide eyes. They had never seen such control after such danger. They whispered to one another, saying that they thought humans were reckless, but they were wrong. They were precise. They had seen death and learned to dance with it. The council's hall was filled with quiet voices trying to make sense of what. They had seen the footage replayed in silence, showing again and again how the humans turned toward danger instead of away. One of the senior members spoke softly to the others, saying that if this was how they reacted in defense, imagine what they could do if they hunted by choice. Another replied that perhaps it was best they never did, for the galaxy would tremble if that day came on the screen. The humans began tending to the wounded aliens, carrying them gently with care. They built temporary shelters and sent a message to the orbiting ship that the threat was neutralized and the survivors were safe. The humans spoke softly to each other, helping even those who had panicked earlier. There was no anger, no pride, only calm, unity. The council realized they were watching something rare, not soldiers following orders, but living beings acting out an old memory, older than civilization itself, a memory written into their nature. When the last transmission ended, the hall remained still. No one clapped. No one spoke. Every leader, every diplomat, every observer sat in the heavy quiet of realization that they had witnessed something ancient, something no amount of technology could replicate. A few minutes later, a council security officer turned to his superior and asked quietly, "What are they really?" Sir, the superior took a long breath and answered, "They are hunters from a world that never forgave weakness and never rewarded fear. They are what happens when survival becomes art." And for the first time, the council understood why humanity could smile and laugh so easily. Because behind that kindness, there was strength born from endless struggle. And behind their calm, there was a storm they chose to control. The recording ended, but the image stayed in everyone's mind. The humans standing in the dark jungle, breathing slow, their eyes reflecting the faint light of a dying fire, like predators who had learned mercy but never forgotten how to hunt. The council dismissed for the night, yet even as they walked away from the chamber, the echo of what they had seen followed them, reminding them that the humans were not to be feared because they were monsters. They were to be respected because they had learned how not to be one.